So I have not personally used Codex, but JJ, our president, has used all of these tools, and his opinion is that Codex is actually the best at code review. This idea of like PR review toolkit, where you use an agent to actually review your code first. He says he will not look at a human review. He will not do a human review before Codex has reviewed it first and taken out all of the kind of menial work first. So, like as Hadley says, when JJ says something, we listen. So like if JJ has endorsed Codex in terms of like being a good code reviewer, I think there's something there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was also wondering, like, because I think a big part of the worry is that when you're getting into the industry, you're going to be a junior dev.
Yeah.
And the worry is that what if the senior devs just use these systems to do the menial labor that you would have come in and like done on your like internship or in your first however many months in the position? Like, do you think that'll happen?
Yeah, I think there will be companies where that happens in. I think that like companies are going to have to look in the mirror and say like, we need to train up the junior engineers. We have to let them do some of this work because learning hands-on is how they learn. I also think there will probably be other things to do. I can't quite explain this yet, but like the menial work maybe goes away and the junior engineers get to learn and train on other things instead, like things that are just like meaningful but smaller projects instead of just doing like menial work of refactoring and fixing the tiniest little bug and stuff. I can't quite explain that yet, but like we don't really know what the future looks like yet. So, but as of right now, you know, Posit is still hiring interns. Like we're still like doing internship programs to do like smaller package work and stuff like that. So we still think it's impactful to kind of train up this next generation. It is obviously a big question on everyone's mind though, right? Like if we just don't hire entry-level people anymore, like how will we get senior level people in the next 10 years? Like we will have this massive gap, right? So that will work itself out, I think. Like I don't have the answer of how, but I think maybe the gap will be filled with people doing slightly different work than what a typical entry-level person would have been doing.
I see. So I mean, but like presumably at some point maybe these systems get better and better.
Yeah. And
like truly you can, for instance, just have even someone junior come in and be able to do the asking around, and like maybe it's just good enough to get you something.
Yeah. I think today it's good enough to get a lot of that something. Yes. But again, like eventually there will be a point where it can't do the something, right? And at that point, what do? Do you just go talk to your boss and be like, I can't do the something? And it's like, well, it's because you didn't learn the piece underneath, right? I don't think it will be, I think it will always, well, I'm never gonna say always with these systems, but as of right now, it is very bad at like the macro stuff, right? It's bad at the design, it's bad at like making something that users really want to use, things that feel good. Like I think dplyr is so successful because it was very thought out in terms of how the verbs work and like how things connect together. Like the overarching design has a lot of human element in it. And that stuff is still like hard for it to do. So there will always be things there.
Where do you find the edges of what it can and can't do currently?
It can do things reasonably well if you can give it a test harness to prove that it's correct. That's, I think, where the boundary often lies. Like, if I can help it test itself, and we can both agree on if this test works, it's probably good enough, then it can solve that problem. If it's open-ended like design, right? Like it will think of something different than me, and we can't like talk about it quite enough for me to ever get happy with like what it's trying to produce on the first round. In those cases, like I found the most effective thing that you can do is Claude has a way to enter plan mode where it lets you go back and forth and it asks you a lot of questions as you're asking questions, and then at the end it outputs a markdown document of exactly what it's going to do before it does it. You can edit that markdown document, go back and forth with it, and that document kind of acts as like a source of truth before it actually starts working on anything. So it's kind of like a pre-test step where you've both agreed on what it's supposed to do. I've certainly had cases where it just ignores that document after the fact and says, no, I'm going to go out and do it this other way instead. So it's not perfect, but stuff like that helps. Yeah, you have a question?
Yeah. When you say learn the fundamentals, like to what extent do you mean that? Is it sufficient to do one project in like databases or something, or should you have taken a course in databases?
I think it depends on, if you're going to work in databases, then I think like certainly the course would be better, right? But you don't necessarily know what your entry-level job is going to be. I do think like just a broad overview of, different programming classes. Take a class that uses R, take a class that learns about uses SQL and databases, and like those are pretty good foundational knowledge to then transfer over to Python if that's what your team uses in your entry-level position. Doesn't mean you have to come in knowing everything about Python. Doesn't mean you have to know everything about databases in R. But like the ability to kind of critical think about how to solve a problem, either like using, I know this package exists and it seems like it solves the problem, and I could pull that in and maybe like read some documentation or start to ask Claude, using this package, how do you solve the problem? And direct it a little bit more is a little bit where the fundamentals come in. Honestly, like the biggest thing that I think you get from, learning more R, learning more database stuff, learning more Python stuff is the ability to tell Claude no. Like the ability to say like, no, like that's not the route we want to go, and because I know that like that's going to lead to failure in some particular way. Like this is the route we actually want to go, and help it course correct. And it's hard to describe like, you get that from doing a course, like not necessarily. It certainly helps. Like I think repetitive repetition and experience like kind of help build that intuition, where just relying on the AI for everything will not. So. You go first, yeah.
So like how would this compare to say like quote unquote like an average person who is not in data science? Like I think about like the introduction of like the iPhone or the tablet.
Yeah.
Like there's that learning curve of like everyone now knows how to use an iPhone and tablet,
Right.
basically. Do you think it's worth for people, like the average person, to learn either how AI works, how to prompt AI, or maybe like basic computer science fundamentals, as you say?
They have different tools for different sets of people. So like Claude Code is very much for software engineers, data scientists, even data scientists are a little borderline there, programmers, I would say. Claude Cowork is like another kind of technology that they have at Anthropic, which is more of like a desktop app type thing where it pops up and kind of helps you with your day-to-day tasks. Like it can help you with email and stuff like that. And you can give it all kinds of other things to help connect in your life and use Claude with. I know that like our sales team is using Claude Cowork to help them generate sales reports and stuff. So like they're not programmers and they never will be, and I would never tell them to install Claude Code, but they do get a lot of value out of using like Claude Cowork instead. So I have not used that myself, so I can't give too much insight into how it works, but I do think that there are going to be a set of tools that developers use and a set of tools that like the general public uses, and I do think there will probably be that as well.
I always feel like there's a paradox in kind of the last thing you had understood. It's important to learn how to use agentic tools, Claude Code, Codex, but then also to learn fundamentals. And I feel like that's a little bit like giving Mickey early access to the magic hat.
It is, yeah.
Like, how do we? Every senior engineer now, I feel like, came up, writing code by hand, hitting bugs, going to Stack Overflow. It's not that they didn't copy code from other places, but they really had to go figure out how to fit it into their use case or think about it and really interact with it in a way that, maybe that senior engineer at Google is doing now, but the junior is not.
Never experienced,
Never
right?
experienced, and so it's like, it's great that Claude Code has tutoring tools and Postgres Assistant can interact with you and teach you new things, but like, is that enough if we're not just getting into the trenches and literally writing it by hand ourselves?
Like there's some level of like, I just can't use the powerful thing, like where you just, if you have the privilege and the time to be able to go through and like learn it at a deeper level, I would encourage that if you can. Like, I totally get if your job is just saying like, no, you have to get this thing by Thursday, and like you don't have the time and Claude can help you do it, then that's what you have to do. And that will help you get through. But like, it's mainly for those cases of like, neither you nor AI can solve the problem, now what, right? Like, and a lot of times the only answer to that is like, learn a little bit more. And maybe it is like you wait until you hit those points, and maybe that's what the future is going to look like, where like you both kind of top out, and now the human goes and does more research, and maybe at the same time sends Claude on a research run and reviews the output that comes back. Maybe that's what the future looks like. But for now, for me, it feels like, I guess maybe because I came up that way, like having a good foundational set of knowledge has been super useful in like using these tools in a different way that I see a lot of other people use.
Maybe we'll see in a couple of years what the now junior devs that grew up with these tools, what they'll do.
Well, you're entirely right? Like, I was listening to something on the way up where they were saying like, Anthropic has been hiring people who are like junior level people, but they've been kind of growing up AI native, is what they called it, right? And like they have some other intuition of how to experiment and use these tools in a way that like we don't. And I think that's also valuable. Like, I don't know if they have like, maybe that, you know, they were hired by Anthropic, they probably also have programming skills, right? Like, they're not gonna hire just everyone. But like, if you combined this like AI native idea with someone who had really solid fundamental programming skills, they will probably do things that are more impressive than what I can do, because I just won't think about how to use the AI tool that way. And I do think that it's going to be a valuable mindset that like the younger generation is gonna come up with that we just won't have.
Do you feel like there's been a switch in like the balance of the amount of time you spend reading code versus writing code? I know that might be fundamentally different, working on a software team with a bunch of other people reviewing PRs, but like with the introduction of the tools, does that change that?
Totally. I am reviewing both my own code and other people's code way more, and particularly other people's code, because other people are like putting up pull requests at a much faster pace than has ever happened before, and they also often tend to be larger now. For better or worse, they're just hitting more things, or they're, for good reason, writing more tests, right? Like we're often adding a lot more tests than we have before, which makes the code coverage line look a lot larger than it was before. But I certainly feel like I'm hitting like reviewer fatigue really quickly, where like I'm reviewing more than I ever have, and then it's like barely enough time for me to get back to my own work by the end of the day. We aren't entirely sure what to do about that problem. At some level, I think in 2026, having a human review is like the best way that we can combat the level of complexity that like Claude will just dump into a project. Like, it's a way for a human to come back and say like, is this actually what we should be doing? Like, Claude will never challenge your assumptions. Claude is a yes and, right? Like, you ask it to do something, it says great idea, and we should do this other thing. Like, you know, it will never say, are you sure? But another human in like the review pipeline will. And so I think like some people have said like, what if we just did away with reviews and just pushed to main everything and went back to like the 1980s? Like, and I think it's a terrible idea. So.
Okay. If no more questions, let's thank Davis again.